Welcome to the Elselah Books podcast. Today, we're diving into J.I. Packer's really influential book, Knowing God. We're going to journey through some of its most powerful ideas, all drawn directly from the text itself. Let's get into it.
So the whole book kind of hangs on this one really powerful image that Packer borrows, an image of a Spanish house. He asks us to picture two kinds of people. You've got those watching life from the balcony, he calls them the Balconeers, and then you have the people actually walking on the road below, the travelers.
And this is where the difference becomes so clear. Balconeers are just spectators, you know? Their questions are all theoretical, like debating the mechanics of the Trinity. But travelers, well, they're participants. Their problems are practical. They aren't asking how God can be three. They're on the road, asking how to live a life that actually honors all three persons during their journey.
So this is the big question Packer is asking you right from the start. He wrote this book not for the observers, but for the travelers. And that's what this explainer is all about. It's an invitation to step off that balcony, get onto the road, and really understand what it means to know God.
Okay, so what's the first obstacle a traveler runs into? Packer points to a very modern problem, our tendency to shrink God down, to make him, well, manageable and small.
The argument in the book is that our culture is just so obsessed with celebrating what we can do that it has this side effect. It leaves very little room for a huge, awe-inspiring idea of God. And Packer says this way of thinking has even crept into the church, leading to a kind of weak faith where God feels, distant and small.
So if the problem is small thoughts, how do we fix that? Well, the book invites the traveler to start by mapping out the sheer scale of God's character.
And the very first stop on that map, before you get to anything else, is a head-on encounter with God's incredible majesty.
Now, this isn't just about power. It's all about perspective. The God Packer is describing here is on a scale that just dwarfs our entire planet. Our whole bustling, important world is to him like a field of grasshoppers. And just thinking about that is the first step in resizing our own problems and our own anxieties. Next, the traveler starts to see that this massive, overwhelming majesty isn't chaotic. Nope. It's guided by a wisdom that covers absolutely everything. The key idea here is that there's a purpose being woven through all of history, and through our own lives too. The same divine logic that guided people like Abraham and Joseph through their pretty crazy trials is still at work today, even when our own lives feel confusing or totally random. And finally, the traveler figures out the motivation behind all this majesty and all this wisdom. An incredible, mind-blowing act of grace.
For Packer, this is the key that unlocks everything. The incarnation isn't just presented as some marvel to be analyzed. It is, in his words, a wonder of grace. A being of infinite majesty and wisdom chose to become poor for us. That just reframes everything.
And that leads us to a really crucial point. This journey isn't some academic exercise. It's not about collecting facts about God. The whole point of the book is that truly knowing God fundamentally transforms the traveler. Packer points us straight to the book of Daniel as a perfect case study. He says that knowing God produces these 4 real, tangible results. Just think about Daniel and his friends. Their knowledge wasn't passive at all. It gave them the energy to act, the boldness to stand up to a king, and this deep contentment even when they were facing a literal fiery furnace. And this is where you can really see the change in how a traveler deals with life's inevitable letdowns and heartbreaks. And the contrast in perspective is just stunning. On one side, you have someone who's stuck, just brooding over what they've lost, what might have been. But on the other side, you get the perspective of the Apostle Paul, who basically said everything he lost was rubbish compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ. It's a total reevaluation of what's actually valuable.
Okay, but how does this knowledge actually help when life is just genuinely confusing and painful? When things happen that make zero sense.
The book dives right into that question, not with some easy answer, but with this really powerful analogy for understanding God's wisdom right in the middle of our trials.
He calls it the signal box view. So imagine you're on a train that suddenly stops in the middle of nowhere. All you feel is frustration, right? Annoyance. But what if you could be lifted up, way up high into the railway signal box? From there, you'd see the entire network of tracks, and you'd understand that your stop was absolutely necessary to prevent a collision up ahead. Knowing God, Packer argues, is like trusting the one in the signal box, who sees the entire picture when all we can see is our own stopped train.
And that brings us right back to the core of Packer's message. For him, this whole journey from the balcony to the road, From just having a theoretical interest about God to a real relational journey of truly knowing God, well, that's the most vital thing anyone can do. It gets to the root cause of so much weakness and fear.
And really, it's a challenge that goes way beyond theology. Think about it. What's the difference between knowing about music theory versus truly knowing how to play the piano? Or knowing facts about someone versus truly knowing them as a friend? Packer's work really makes us stop and think about which kind of knowledge we're actually pursuing in all the different parts of our lives. Thank you for listening, and do subscribe to our channel for more.